Coming up on Tech News today, who's got the fastest 4G and what do we mean by 4G? Also, is there really a spectrum crisis? Sarah Lane's going to tell us. And hope for the internet's future. Plus, why you shouldn't tip the Bellman in the face. All that and more coming up next.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT.
Bandwidth for Tech News Today is provided by Cachefly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is Tech News Today for Wednesday, April 18th, 2012. Tech News Today is brought to you by Gazelle, the easy way to sell your iPhone, iPad, iPod, or Android smartphones from your home or office so you can get the latest versions. Get a risk-free quote that's good for 30 days at Gazelle.com. And by GoToMeeting with HD Faces. Meet easily with colleagues even when traveling or working remotely. For your free 30-day trial, visit GoToMeeting.com, promo code TNT. Welcome to Tech News Today. I'm Tom Merritt.
I'm Sarah Lane.
I'm Iyaz Akhtar.
I'm Jason Howell.
And very happy to have with us today Danny Sullivan, Editor-in-Chief of Search Engine Land. How's it going, Danny?
Good. Good to be here.
Thanks for joining us. We got some meaty stories today. Lots of stuff going on in the tech world to kick around. Starting with the fastest 4G service in the United States of America.
Ooh, who gets to wear that crown?
AT&T and Verizon, and maybe T-Mobile, depending on how you look at it.
So Sprint.
So most of them.
Sprint's
Sprint.
the court jester.
Take that, Metro PCS.
Sorry, but Sprint was kind of last.
We knew you thought you were the number one. You're not.
Two studies out. PC World conducted their 2012 mobile speed test, comparing various versions of 4G in various markets. AT&T's LTE had the fastest download speeds in their test, while Verizon LTE had the fastest upload speeds, although they did give credit to T-Mobile's HSPA 42 for being very close in those numbers. They also did a 3G service test and found that T-Mobile's HSPA 21 had the fastest 3G service. Sprint WiMAX lagged behind in all of their tests. They conducted these in Atlanta, Boston, Chicago, Dallas, Denver, Las Vegas, Los Angeles, New Orleans, New York, San Francisco, San Jose, Seattle, and Washington, D.C.
Although I do believe that AT&T is not even yet available in, I think it's Seattle and New Orleans.
So they had to
So technically, even though
markets,
their data was factored in, you have to kind of take that with a grain of salt too, because they weren't even able to compete in certain markets.
The other study was from Root Metrics, a company you may have seen as Root Wireless in the past. They conducted, they're actually constantly going around and surveying connection data. That's their business. And they put out a study of its own that really did not materially differ from the PC World study. They said that Verizon had the best performing LTE network, and that's why you see Verizon is quoting Root Metrics study today, and AT&T's quoting the PC World study. But they were saying essentially the same thing the PC World was saying. AT&T had the best download, Verizon had the best upload, but in real-world performance, on average, you got better speeds in both upload and download with Verizon.
Well, that in the real world, in Verizon land anyway, like it's 2/3 of America at this point, so you actually get LTE in areas that AT&T just isn't in. And just seeing Sprint get beaten up like this, this is why they're building their own LTE network out. It's supposed to be out in June, 6 markets or so. So maybe it'll be as fast. I mean, is speed what you need, or is it really the coverage? Because even the 3G speeds were up compared to last year. I was happy about that because I'm sometimes in an area without LTE or 4G or HSPA or whatever the heck it is. But the 3G speeds are faster in general. I'm really liking that.
Oh, well, especially, I mean, look at T-Mobile hanging in there, and often has lower cost accounts that you can get than with anything on AT&T and Verizon. And if you're in an area, let's take Petaluma, where we are right now, for example. Not really sure when LTE is coming here. You might have a solid year or so to be able to switch to a carrier that you're going to get more out of on a 3G network.
Well, up here, I can tell you right now, T-Mobile has their 4G network up here.
Well, it's not a 4G network.
Well, okay,
they have their HSP 42.
Their 4G network. Yes, their faster network.
As soon as my iPhone went to 4G, I felt much better about it, even though it hadn't really changed at all other than the little icon. But
it definitely gives you a warm feeling, doesn't it?
I've used the Verizon. I've had a Verizon LTE phone for over a year, and once you've gone that way, going back down to it, I sort of didn't even care about what the fallback was because now I just sort of expected. But over the past 3 or 4 months, I've been using an AT&T LTE phone as well, and I was really impressed. It's kept up there with Verizon. In some cases, it's actually done better than Verizon in terms of coverage where I didn't expect it or staying up. The real test for me was South by Southwest, where I think at this point, because so many people had shifted over to Verizon, that suddenly my AT&T phone on LTE didn't have anybody like the way that Verizon did about a year ago. So that was nice.
Yeah, it's all about how many people are using it as much as anything else. That's why I kind of want to look at the root metrics data more than the PC World data, because I know what I've actually met with them before several years back, but I know what their methods are, which is they drive around and basically record constantly what kind of connection they're getting and what kind of speed they're getting. So they're trying to at least replicate that user service, and they have some apps out there that they give to people to download and kind of get some crowdsourced data as well. So it's interesting to keep an eye on that. Also, aggregate data from across the United States, probably not as useful as what is it in your particular area.
Right, yeah, unless you're doing a lot of traveling most of the time, you just want your LTE or even your 3G to work within 50 miles of your house. Now,
all of these carriers want to roll out wider service. They want to roll out new, faster service, but they all say, we don't have enough spectrum. Is it true?
Well, it depends on if you actually ask the wireless companies or you ask, people who have helped build the internet and work in the fields of science, who know a little something about radio frequency. So
they make monsters.
Right, yeah. They're going to build robots that will kill us all. Let's keep that in mind in this next story. So AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile, and Sprint all say we need more spectrum. There's an increasing demand. Everybody's on smartphones. Everybody's pulling down more data than ever, and we're going to really be in a bad place come, say, this time next year. We're going to have dropped calls. People are going to have bad connections. It's just going to be a mess. We need more spectrum.
It's going to be like being on AT&T in San Francisco for the past 5 years.
Right.
Okay. That's a cheap shot.
But that will
True
be
shot.
But what AT&T is saying is, and then we'll be up against a wall. We need the FCC to give us more spectrum so that we can build out our networks. Okay, we've heard this before, and we've talked about before. Is spectrum infinite, or is it a finite thing? What's the real story? So, inventor of the cell phone, former VP of Motorola, chairman at Dyna LLC,
I guess we kind of have to
that's a tech company incubator, Martin Cooper, says, listen, the wireless industry goes through this every few years, and there is technology out there right now to fix networks that does not require you to buy up more spectrum. What the wireless companies want to do is buy more spectrum so that other companies can't take it. They're treating spectrum as frequencies, where there's an end in sight, and it's sort of a zero-sum game, who can get the most before somebody else gets it. Because once, let's say Verizon has a license for a frequency band, then nobody else can use it. And that keeps sort of a monopoly type of a situation.
Which would explain why Verizon wants to swap some 700 megahertz spectrum for other spectrum. You'd think, well, if there's a spectrum crunch, you'd think they'd want to hold on to it. That 700 megahertz spectrum has open access provisions on it.
Right. They don't want that.
Yeah.
They want spectrum that nobody else can use. One of the technology examples of what Verizon could do, rather than try to grab more spectrum, which they obviously want, is something called smart antennas. Traditional radio antennas on cell towers basically are just sending energy out all over the place in all directions. Only some of that actually gets to a phone. Smart antennas would basically direct energy right at the right kind of phones. These phones would actually have bands inside them, new antennas inside the phones that would be able to pick up these frequencies. And it would basically use the spectrum more efficiently. That's just one case of what carriers could do. Are they all doing this? No. And why is that? Well, because if they're going to invest money, why not just invest money in spectrum?
Is it cheaper to just buy spectrum?
Well, it's not only cheaper, but then it makes it harder for another company to roll out their networks.
Right.
We're talking about LTE rollouts. This is really important for companies. Somebody like Verizon, a company like Verizon, corporations are people too, doesn't want AT&T to be able to roll out their network. That's just the way that competition goes. So you think, all right, well, you get why the carrier is trying to spin this a certain way.
Right.
But then why does the FCC not disagree with them? Shouldn't the FCC understand?
Isn't that what they exist to do, is to adjudicate this stuff?
Exactly. The FCC spokesman Neil Grace said, Listen, no single action is a silver bullet when it comes to meeting mobile capacity needs. More efficient use of spectrum, new technologies, and unleashing new spectrum are all important parts of the mix.
He forgot campaign contributions, but I think he meant that.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's probably something that should be factored into it. Another science guy, David Reed, Senior Vice President at a business software company, SAP Labs, former professor of computer science and engineering at MIT, says, guess what? Electromagnetic spectrum is not finite. There's technology for transmitting and receiving signals so that they don't even interfere with one another. Separating frequency bands shouldn't even be required. Spectrum can be shared.
That's crazy talk.
And the way that people talk about it is like the way that we talked about it in the early 1900s when people thought of spectrum as radio bands, frequency bands.
I think that's the way we all think of it because we're used to that.
Yes.
Maybe not a radio dial, at least the little numbers that come up digitally. Like that's the spectrum that's used for that station, and no one else can use it.
Right. So I think, does the FCC just not want to totally deregulate this whole thing and build it up from scratch with actual real world terminology that people understand? Or do they not understand themselves?
You can see the FCC saying, look, we've done it this way before. This is the way it's worked. It wasn't that big a deal up till now, apparently, because we're running out, apparently. It's all monopolistic. We can't possibly share this. And there have been suggestions where there would be like almost timeshares with actual military-grade spectrum that are going to say, we run it during these times, you have it for these other times. So it looks like they are looking into alternate means of doing this. But there's no way like Verizon or AT&T isn't going to try to lobby like crazy to be like, do not dare make these, well, not pipes, but I guess these spectrum bandwidth, don't make it dumb. Don't make it available for everybody, because when we get to have it, we get to control everything. It's just like how cable to the curb or fiber to the curb, that's not dumb. That's owned by the infrastructure provider, and that's caused so much problems in the past. It'd be nice to be able to look at that and go, okay, maybe when it's in the airwaves, we could easily say, these are the dumb pipes for all.
Yeah, I just want them to figure it out so that we don't have caps anymore and we get consistent, reliable service. Are you with me, Danny?
Yeah, to me, part of the problem is that we're also shoving so much more through our phones that, there's so much video content that we're shoving out that way that you kind of buy into the pipes are getting clogged type of argument. And we're – it's like we're pushing stuff out through the phones that they weren't really intended to do in the first place, and the carriers themselves seem to be quite happy to get us to buying into that because then they sell us more data. But then it's like, oh dear, now we have a problem. How do we solve it? I guess we need to have more frequency. And I guess if we're going to give them more spectrum, I'd like to have a better sense of, well, what are we getting back for that? If we do give up our public spectrum for you to make use of it, are you going to then guarantee that we are unlimited? Or are you going to come up with plans that suddenly I don't have to discover that not only was it bad enough that you wanted to charge me a $10 upgrade fee for my smartphone, because which phone isn't smart at this point, but now you want to slap on another $30 upgrade fee here or whatever. I feel so beholden to these companies and so much of an inability to shift away from them, and yet they're still using our public airways in the end for making a lot of money off of us.
I'm with you, and I think we add to that, if you want to continue to hold your spectrum, you have to have a meeting with David P. Reed from SAP Labs and talk about this idea of using tech that means that you can share spectrum across multiple companies, because it's a little bit of a utopia sounding thing, but apparently it's got some science behind it. I want to hear more about that. Portuguese website Zwame interviewed a Microsoft developer evangelist named Nuno Silva, who said the current installed base of Windows smartphones would get the next major version of Windows Phone, meaning Apollo. Everyone started cheering, hey, if I've got a Windows Phone, I'm going to get Windows Phone 8. Well, The Verge's Dieter Bohn went to his trusted sources, and they told him the opposite. They said there's actually no upgrade path from Mango to Apollo, and this matches something that Mary Jo Foley from ZDNet and Windows Weekly was talking about a month or so ago. Microsoft's only comment on the matter has been, we have stated publicly that all apps in our marketplace today will run on the next version of Windows Phone. Beyond that, we have nothing to share about future releases. Sort of sidesteps the question, because talking about apps is not talking about upgrades. Coincidentally, marketing manager Gavin Kim, who left Samsung to join Microsoft in November, has now left Microsoft. Microsoft confirmed he's gone, so not very long
5 months
there.
in.
Do you think he was scared off by the upgrade problem?
Well, yeah, it's anything less than a year sometimes seems a little a little fishy. I think Microsoft said it was a personal thing, no hard feelings.
Yeah, no, nobody's saying nasty things about each other. It doesn't seem like he left it a huff, but it was a short tenure. Netbooknews.com reporting that the agenda for an upcoming Apollo Mo Summit in Reading UK indicates that OEMs will at least get talked to about customization and differentiation, something that Windows Phone is not allowed up until now. And especially Asian manufacturers have been kind of vocal about saying, look, we need to be able to differentiate our model of Windows Phone from others. Nokia actually has the ability to do this because of their special agreement with Microsoft. They haven't really taken advantage of it, though, from any of the Lumias that I've seen. So all of this leaves us with a lot of fog and smoke and no real understanding. But how horrible would it be if you bought that Lumia 900 and then when Apollo comes out, Windows Phone 8, part of the big launch that's expected to happen along with Windows 8 on the desktop, and you can't get it?
I would be really mad.
Yeah.
Listen, I understand that the Lumias aren't that expensive out of the gate, and that's part of the reason that people say, well, they might feel a little less substantial, maybe a little flimsier, but the price is right, software's good, and look what's coming. We've heard so much about what's coming this year from Microsoft. This is really going to be the next generation of computing, and then you can't be a part of it.
Well, theoretically, Microsoft's statement of we've stated publicly that all our apps will work on the next version, they're basically telling developers don't stop making apps for Windows Phone. Just because the next version may not run on your old hardware, whatever works right now in our app store should work on the old Windows Phone. So
don't freak out.
Yeah, don't leave us just yet. Don't leave us for Android. Don't run away to Blackberry or wherever else you might go. Please stay with us because we will have apps for your Windows Phone that's existing now. Lumia 900 should still have apps that run these things for Windows Phone 8. But eventually that's going to break entirely because right now it's basically saying the next Windows Phone has backwards compatibility. But how long before there's a break saying, you know what, this doesn't have the power for it? Because back to some of Mary Jo's stuff, it's Windows Phone 8 is expected to share a lot of DNA with Windows 8 itself. So that's a huge break from what's going on with Windows Phone in general. So it's kind of a strange, it's almost like the Windows Phone thing that came out now, Windows Phone 7, is almost this stopgap, which is strange because that's what 6.5 was supposed to be, a stopgap. But they want to bring everything back together. So Microsoft not making anything clear. This just is pretty much like when everyone was asking, will there be desktop on Windows on ARM? And it took us 3 months to find out. I'm figuring by December, people who have Nokia Lumias are going to be ticked, by the way.
Well, it also just reminds me of the Android cluster, you know what?
Yeah, that.
Because then you have people having these conversations of well, what version are you on? Oh yeah, my phone doesn't get that, or I think it's coming out in March, or it's a mess, and nobody wants to be a part of that except the people who have the latest version of software, and that's a very small percentage.
Yeah, go ahead, Danny.
I was going to say, I've got both of them, right? I've got the Nexus and I've got the Lumia, and the Galaxy Nexus. I'm still waiting for my other Android phone, which is the Skyhook or Sky whatever it is rocket from AT&T, which should be as capable as the Galaxy Nexus and is still sitting there. We're 4 months into Ice Cream Sandwich. I don't know that it'll ever get Android 4.0. Or by the time it gets Android 4.0, it's really likely that Android 5.0 will be out. So it's almost like it kind of doesn't really matter to the degree what operating system your phone has, because by the time they get around to rolling out the new update, you're being pitched a new phone. If I recall, when we had the new when iPhone 4S came out, we also had the upgrade to the new iOS version at the same time. Mm-hmm. It's still disappointing, though, because you would think that, especially with Windows Phone, because there's a lot of maturity that still needs to go on with the OS, that there are things that you're looking at and you're like, well, it can't do this or it can't do that. And is that a minor tweak? And should they fix it? I want it fixed. I don't want to think, oh, I got to just throw this perfectly good phone away, 6 months down the line because we don't get it. But while people who are really big on technology might be frustrated, somebody who just bought their Windows Phone, who just for whatever reason they decided to buy it, they might just be thinking, well, that's the way the phones are. I'm not really worried about upgrading it that much. There's no great new giant feature that I'm wanting to go with it, so maybe it won't be so bad.
Well, that's always the question, is how many people will really notice. But when your market share is as slim as Windows Phone, I think you do have to worry about those people because those are your influencers. Those are the people who are going to tell other folks, hey, check out my fresh new phone. And you kind of want to keep them happy. So
sure.
It'll be interesting to see what actually happens because we don't really know, other than the apps will be backwards compatible. Let's take a quick break and thank our sponsor, Gazelle. If you've got your eye on a new device, a good way to get some cash for that new iPhone or Android smartphone, or maybe you want an iPod or an iPad or a Mac, is to trade up. Take your old gadgets over to Gazelle.com. Get a risk-free quote that's good for 30 days. Do it today because gadgets lose value over time. GAZELLE.com is the place to go. Take that old iPod, that iPad, that Mac, put it in. Be accurate as you can about what model you've got, what processor you got, all of that sort of thing, what condition it's in, and then they'll give you free shipping. You send it off to Gazelle. If they look at it and they're like, this is a little better condition than you said, they'll actually upgrade you. But your quote is locked in for 30 days, and you'll get paid fast by check, PayPal, Amazon gift card to actually get you 5% more. Great way to get cash to put towards the latest devices. And so do it now. Remember, just like when you drive a car off the lot, your gadgets lose their value over time. So go to Gazelle.com right now, get the best offer, lock it in for 30 days, find out what your gadget is worth. It only takes a minute. And the faster you do it, the more money you're going to get for your gadgets. Go to visit Gazelle.com for your risk-free quote today. I've made several $100s in the last couple of months just cleaning out my garage, getting rid of some old stuff.
New gadgets come in, new gadgets go.
Of course, I've also spent several $100s as well. But hey, every little bit helps. Exactly. Speaking of spending some money, did Mark Zuckerberg just go off and spend $1 billion without telling anyone else on the board?
That's pretty much what happened. Wall Street Journal is reporting how the deal between Instagram and Facebook went down, and apparently Zuckerberg was talking to is it Kevin Systrom, the CEO of Instagram, and he's like, "Well, why don't you come over? Let's talk about stuff." And he ends up having a 3-day negotiation to buy Instagram. And what was the
Did they sleep? Did they eat? 3 days.
Well, I don't think it was 3. Well, yeah. Systrom went home. The actual Wall Street Journal thing said that. It goes, Systrom went home to a San Francisco home every night. So they were very specific in their article.
Not like the
Did he take the 280 or the 101? Did they say that?
I didn't catch that. I was more concerned about the valuation, why $1 billion was settled. So let's talk about that if you don't mind.
No.
Apparently, Zuckerberg was asking Systrom to value Instagram as a percentage of Facebook. So Systrom was saying, well, maybe it's like 1% of Facebook, so Facebook could be like $200 billion. So how about $2 billion? And so they talked a bit, and I think that came up to a valuation. New York Times was reporting that that Facebook was valued at $104 billion, and that's how they came up with the $1 billion number. And the $1 billion would be broken down to 70% stock, which could be a whole lot, and 30% cash, because obviously Facebook hasn't IPO'd yet, and that could be well over $1 billion for the total deal. And Zuckerberg had to make sure that he told a Systrom that Instagram is going to remain independent. It's not going to be mucked with too often. Also, why would Zuckerberg want to get this? Why bother with this? Apparently, he was concerned that millions of people were signing up for that Android app, and he was concerned about mobile because Facebook apparently lagging in mobile. It doesn't seem to be concerned with that. And when Zuckerberg told the board what was happening, that's exactly what happened. He kind of just told them, here's what happens. I have 57% of the voting power. We're buying this for $1 billion. And then the board said, let's vote on it. Sure. And that was the end of that.
57% of us agree.
We agree with you, sir. And they moved on. And that's the story, and why Instagram's story will never die, because it'll keep going all week as details come out.
Daddy, is this unusual, or is this the way Zuck's going to run the company, or is it like, you know what, I had to get one in before the IPO?
I don't know. I mean, that's a lot of money, and I don't know. I think even though he controls the entire company and can do what he wants, so to speak, that when you're actually public and you have the public investors and the stock price starts actually going down because they're not happy with you, that changes it. And we saw that happen with Google as well, where they were exactly like, Zuck, and they're like, well, we're going to do whatever we want, and here's our owner's manual. You better think about what you're buying because we're going to drive it however we want. And then you started having investment calls, and you started seeing them actually react to some of the concerns in the investment community. They saw them making changes or talking more about what's going on with the company. I think they'll still do what they want ultimately, but it's not quite so easy when now all those thousands of employees you have who actually have stock options that depend on the price of that share and what's going to happen with it, it'll have an impact. So maybe this is another one that he slipped in under the wire. Hey, Mom, look, I found this dog. I'm going to bring it home. Can I keep it? Actually, I am going to keep it.
I was thinking about it like the credit card statement. It's like You bought what?
Yeah.
There's $1 billion charge for Instagram.
But I already
on
own
here.
it, so we can't give it back.
Yeah, there's no return policies. Sorry.
I kind of like the idea of saying, let's say Instagram is 1% of Facebook.
Good negotiating tactic, Kevin Systrom.
Yeah, I mean, but if you think about it that way, I think it's pretty clear that Mark Zuckerberg wants the kind of momentum that a company like Instagram was enjoying. Now, for a really long time, they were on iOS only. So it was kind of like, yeah, people wanted them to come to the Android platform, but it hadn't happened for so long. It's like, well, maybe it's just an Apple, Apple Store, App Store kind of a thing.
Build up that anticipation.
Phenomenon. Well, and then within a couple days, it's like, no, actually, people are signing up in droves from Android, and it's only going to, it won't be long before they double their 30 million. And that's the momentum that he wanted to buy. And when you're as big a company as Facebook, you can say like, well, you're whatever percent. Like, how about 1 billion? That's a drop in the bucket compared to the kind of money that I have at the ready.
It's cooler than 1%, 2%.
Yeah. It's also, I think part of it's also when you have that much money that you can spend, it's like whatever. It's just like, what? These tires are going to cost me $1,000 for my car? All right. If you're a millionaire, you don't think much about it. Whereas if you're, a working stiff, you're like, well, maybe I want to shop around. And, the debates will continue on whether or not it really was worth $1 billion. And, it just seems like crazy money. But then there's still the arguments that Facebook itself is crazy money. You would think that if Facebook really was that worried about it, they could probably invent their own version of Instagram. It wouldn't seem to be that hard for them to do. But, hey, I got the money to spend. It doesn't matter. So
just
you want to do, yeah, whatever.
Yeah, buy or build, buy. I got time. We got other things to build. That's probably some of the logic that went on there. Speaking of crazy, the Google Oracle case continues in San Francisco District Court. Yesterday, as we were recording the show, Larry Page had actually taken the stand in person. We had talked about his video deposition. Google had their own slideshow to accompany Oracle's, and they had used a failed stamp on Sun and Oracle's efforts to build a Java smartphone. Google's key points of evidence here are that Sun gave the Java language to the public, which they did. Now, the mobile implementation is a little bit of a different licensing issue, but sure, okay, they open source Java. Google built Android using free and open technologies. That is, the question is about the APIs, whether those were free and open, but Google says they were. Sun publicly approved Android's use of Java, and they have quotes from CEO Jonathan Swartz praising Android's utilization of Java. And then Google made fair use of the Java language APIs in Android. And that's really what it all comes down to, is was that fair use of the APIs, or does Google owe Oracle for the use of those APIs, or should they have even taken a GPL license out and run it through the compatibility test, which you do have to pay for, but it's a free license, and they didn't do that. Google said, if there were no APIs, we would only have a language. You would be able to write basic computations that never did any I/O, had any communication with the outside world or the underlying platform. So what they're trying to convince the judge of here is you can rule that the APIs were under copyright, but if you do, you're pretty much it's tantamount to ruling that the programming language is under copyright, which that has been ruled not to be under copyright. Google CEO Larry Page also was unable to identify a piece of evidence which caused a legal tussle between the two teams of lawyers. The judge finally said, you know what, he can't identify it. Let him go. See if another witness can identify it. If another witness can identify it, then we'll bring Larry Page back. So he may end up back in court.
Yeah, to one of that slides, there's some great points. It's a good presentation. And Sun gave Java language to the public. That's not entirely true. Part of it is still not. You have to pay for that license.
Java is entirely open source, but the runtime machine, right, J2ME, which Google is not using. They wrote their own.
They claim that's what Dalvik's all about. Then this is Google built their own tools with free and open technologies. That's fine. Sun publicly endorsing or approving Android's use of Java, that doesn't really mean much if it doesn't pass that compatibility test at the end of the day, because the reason why you can do this and use Java for free is if it doesn't break compatibility. And if this version did, and I think it's like Andy Rubin's emails that say, we won't submit this because it's not going to pass their test. We're not going to put Dalvik in there because it's not going to work. If that's the issue, like, of course, because Sun at first could be like, oh, yeah, you're really working with this? And he's going to make it compatible? We love it. But if at the end of the day, if it breaks it, they don't have to approve it, and that early approval doesn't mean much. So it seems like it's a really nice presentation of some facts that were true, but it all falls back onto the APIs. Can they be used or not?
Yeah, we haven't made much progress on that essential question. Danny, have you been following this case? I assume you have.
A little bit. I mean, to be honest, the patent stuff gets outside my area, and I just sort of yield to the experts, and even the experts seem to be confused by it all.
But it's kind of fun to see the CEOs on the witness stand, isn't it?
Oh yeah, yeah. There's definitely that, especially when they get squirmed. It was, I think the thing I was reading last was, they were trying to get Larry Page to give yes or no's, and it's like, no, you must give a yes or no. He didn't.
You're an engineer. So. Answer in binary. For goodness sake.
In binary, 001 001.
All right, let's finish off with The Guardian continuing their week-long Battle for Control of the Internet series. That's the one we talked about Monday, which had quotes from Sergey Brin. Now, a lot of people took those quotes to mean that Sergey was equating the evils of Facebook and Apple with the evils of the government. He has been quick to defend himself from those kinds of accusations. He wrote today, "The primary threat by far to Internet freedom is government filtering of political dissent. I do not think that the problem of digital ecosystems is on par with government-based censorship." And he said, while openness is a core value at Google, there are a number of areas where we can improve too. He's like, I wish the whole transcript would have been published because it made it sound like I was claiming that Google was exempt from any of these problems. And he's saying that we're not. We have improvements we can make as well. As part of that series today, Tim Berners-Lee was interviewed. And he is arguing that we need to demand our data back from the companies who hold it. So the Twitters, the Googles, the Facebooks, they hold all kinds of data about us. The phones hold all kinds of data about us. And one of the issues of these social networking silos, in his words, is that they have the data and I don't. There are no programs that I can run on my computer which allow me to use all the data in each of the social networking systems that I use, plus all the data in my calendar, plus in my running map site, plus the data in my little fitness gadget, and so on, to provide excellent support to me. Not, in other words, not to give to anybody, taking that data you already gave to other people, pulling it back, and then consolidating it, and having a program that can read all that data and say, hey, you've got an appointment today, you want to reschedule your run, because it knows all of these things about you that the social networks know.
So is he calling for a standardization of export of content? I mean,
I think so.
To build a mega network.
In other words, Google,
at your home.
Google and Facebook should make it so that all of the data you give them is readable by you, and you could run a program of your own, or maybe in the cloud, that can consolidate all that data from all the different sources and then look for patterns and interpret it.
Kind of like use like an RSS reader kind of example. Like you have feeds that are standard, and you can have a giant OPML at the end of the day, and you can use that later on.
It's structured data, yeah.
You could do it. Can you call for Facebook to do that because you're agreeing to the terms of service? How are you going to set up?
Yeah, it's like, okay, let's say that we all agree we really should get this going. Now what? Do we start a Facebook protest group?
Well, I mean, he's not saying it should be against the law for them not to do it necessarily, right. But maybe that's the ultimate thing is you have to pass a law saying you have the right to your data. Mm-hmm. But I think what he's starting with is we don't have to go that far. We start a standard, and we put pressure on these companies to conform to a standard. Plenty of progress has been made on privacy without passing any laws, and it's this kind of pressure from folks like Tim Berners-Lee that brings it about. Danny, I know you cover a lot of things that deal with this kind of complex structured data and interpreting it. What do you think about the high concept of what Lee is saying here?
I think it's more high concept than reality.
Mm-hmm.
He's wanted for some time the idea that we'd have this meta web and all this
semantic
data which is
web,
magically talk to it or whatever, and it doesn't come out to play for a variety of reasons. One of the reasons is that we don't necessarily trust metadata. It's very easy for people to lie through it. It's also complicated because people have different standards and they don't agree on how to put all that stuff together. But the idea of what he's talking about, in one level, it makes a lot of sense. It's part of what Google's Data Liberation Front is all about, that you should be able to take your contacts out. You should be able to take all of your posts out of a service and go with it from that. I think it gets more complicated if you say, well, you can get all your stuff out of Facebook. I think what he's talking about is how, I think under Irish law, you can tell Facebook, you have to give us everything we've ever done on your service, and then they'll export everything you've liked and every comment you've made and all that sort of stuff. And, potentially that's a useful thing that you can have as well, but then there's also potentially some privacy dangers that come into that as well. If you make it easy for all this stuff to be exportable, then possibly you also open up security holes where people might hack in and get all this information out as well. And then what information are we talking about? And I don't know. In general, I like the idea that you can take your data out. but I think the idea of somehow it's all going to magically talk together. I don't know how my search history at Google is just going to magically talk together with, my chat history at Facebook.
You structure it, right? Isn't that the buzzword I'm supposed to use there?
Yeah, I suppose you can structure it in a way, but I don't know that I necessarily want to structure it in a way. I don't know if it's worth that much effort. I think the far bigger problem that people have right now is they just don't easily understand all the data that's even being harvested. So before we get to I want to be able to export my data, what we really need is a better job of just people having the ability to understand what companies know about them and have the ability to delete it if they want to. I think that's the bigger concern a lot of people might have is, wow, I didn't know that you had this history of all my likes. I actually don't want you to keep that history anymore. Delete and wipe it away, which is also difficult because when you do a like, it's a public action, so do you have the right to then take it away down the line, if you want to?
BernersLee was also critical of lockdown systems like smartphone apps and surveillance and control from the net by governments, similar to the criticisms that Sergey Brin raised in his interview with The Guardian on Monday. But he did end on a hopeful note. He says it's interesting that people throughout the existence of the web have been concerned about monopolies. They were concerned about Netscape having complete control over the browser market until suddenly they started worrying about Microsoft having complete control of the browser market. So I think one of the lessons is that things can change very rapidly. They actually use the example of Gopher, too. People were worried about Gopher taking over the internet at one point, and folks left Gopher very rapidly once the web came along. So things do change very rapidly on the net. If nothing else, you can take comfort in that or be disturbed by that if you like the way things are. Let's move on to the news fuse. Writer Brent Schleneder found about 36 tapes which contained interviews with Steve Jobs held over a 25-year period. The interviews suggest that Jobs' success was due in large part to his wilderness years, the period when Jobs was no longer with Apple. His experiences at Next and Pixar was like an 11-year business school that helped him return to lead Apple. Contents of the tapes are summarized at Fast Company's website.
During the Yahoo earnings call, CEO Scott Thompson said that Yahoo is going to be changing. And the way that they're going to do that is they're going to shut down 50 Yahoo properties.
Which ones?
Well, Yahoo's been doing way too much for too long, says Thompson, and was only doing a few things really well. So,
which ones?
What they're going to focus on, Tom, are sports, finance, mail, and personalizing content for users.
So he didn't say which one.
No, pretty much you have to figure out the people that got laid off. Probably those projects are probably
shocker.
dead.
Yahoo will keep sports.
So Spotify had a big announcement, and guess what it was? Drum roll, please. New advertiser. That's right. Coca-Cola will offer up a Spotify app. That's right. So for all of you who wanted your music influenced by Coca-Cola, you finally got your wish. Okay, CNET's Greg Sandoval reports the first question asked at the press conference after they announced this, quote, when are you going to release the iPad app?
When are you going to have an announcement?
That's it, Spotify. You can't have any more announcements.
You're bad.
Until you can prove yourself worthy of announcements.
HTC released an over-the-air update for the One X that fixes unresponsive on-screen items and helps with battery life. The 30-megabyte update also generally improves performance. SlashGear says after the update, the One X's benchmark scores were better.
Fresh on the Building Windows 8 blog, Microsoft has detailed how Windows 8 will manage memory specifically with Metro apps. You can reclaim all of the memory dedicated to Metro apps when that app isn't at the forefront. If there's memory pressure, suspended Metro apps will use less memory than before, and that memory will be reallocated to active apps. If you're interested in this, if your interest is piqued, and I didn't provide enough detail, they have an over 2,000-word post over at the Building Windows 8 blog.
I feel like I'm forgetting something.
And a video. Did you forget it's earnings season?
That's it.
There you go. Qualcomm announced its Q2 earnings, and it's breaking records. Qualcomm makes lots of chips for, phones, tablets, pretty much everything. Q2 revenues were $4.94 billion, which is up 28% year over year. Net income was also up 21%, but a lot of that was helped by the $1.2 billion sale of Qualcomm's 700 megahertz spectrum.
Asus is offering a free GPS fix for its Transformer Prime tablets. A dongle that attaches to the same port that is used for the keyboard dock addresses poor GPS performance. However, the dongle isn't free for everyone. According to a translated Asus Italy Facebook page, Transformer Prime sold outside of the United States, Taiwan, and certain European countries will not be offered the dongle because the Prime was never marketed in those places as having full GPS. So you'll have to buy the dongle on the black dongle market.
Ugh. I don't want that market. According to Symantec, there are still approximately 140,000 Macs infected with that flashback Trojan. Apple has released patches to address the Java vulnerability, as well as a malware removal tool for flashback, which infected over 600,000 machines. Symantec projects that the number of affected machines should drop to under 100,000 by Tuesday.
After a dismal fourth quarter, I guess they were under it too, that saw RIM's first revenue decline in 7 years. The company has a plan.
Finally.
Sell more BlackBerry smartphones and tablets, license its mobile software, and find strategic investors. That's a good idea. Ask people for money. Brim gets 60% of its revenue from the U.S., UK, and Canada, but analysts say Asian countries, including China, India, and Indonesia, offer new growth opportunities for RIM, with a large working population who still want and need a BlackBerry device.
Let's move on to the randomizer.
Randomizer.
I am fascinated with North Korea. It's kind of like a time capsule. You know,
yeah, with
preserved
starvation
in like 1970s communism. Oh, it's not fun, but it's weird.
It is fascinating. I agree with you.
Michael Datana, a Fordham student, dug into North Korea's webpage source and found that the template they use on their website was a $15 WordPress template. They're running WordPress. I'll give them that. He was doing a project for his Korean history political science course. A keyword search for Envato web design will turn up a prompt comment from the site's theme seller telling the person who bought it how to customize it.
Well, it's not like anybody in North Korea can see this website. So, I mean, who are they really needing to impress besides a few people in government?
Am I the only person?
$15 seems about right.
I'm like the only person who doesn't think this is crazy. They didn't spend too much money. You know, we over here in the U.S., we spend a lot of money overspending in the government. $15 for a WordPress theme. They could have gone with the free one. I guess they could have saved more money. But $15, that's pretty thrifty. No? Don't want to save money for the government?
No,
that's the whole oppression thing.
No, it's very thrifty, and I guess North Korea needs to be thrifty because they have
a space program and rockets.
Save their money for food.
And rockets.
And missiles. Rockets. Sorry, rockets. If you read the North Korea website, you'll know it was a rocket, not a missile. All right, let's take a quick break and thank our other sponsor. Tech News Today brought to you by GoToMeeting by Citrix. With colleagues working from home, traveling for business, getting everyone together for a meeting can be an impossible task. We've got the solution. GoToMeeting with HD Faces. That's right. Now you can participate in meetings while on the go using the built-in camera that you already have. You got one on your iPad. You got one on your laptop. GoToMeeting lets team members meet wherever they are, and all they need is an internet connection. Everybody is on the same page. You put that page up on the screen, and you can look into each other's eyes. You can use nonverbal communication. You can feel like you're in the room with people, and it's easy to set up. It's not a big technical thing. You just click a button. Makes conference calls so much more effective. You can use it for product collaboration sessions, planning meetings, status updates, any kind of meeting where you need to look at each other and show people things, all right from wherever you are. Start hosting your own face-to-face online meetings today with GoToMeeting. Our listeners can try it free for 30 days. GoToMeeting 12.1 Collaborate. Visit GoToMeeting.com, click the Try It Free button, and enter promo code TNT. We thank Citrix for their support of Tech News Today. What's on the calendar, Sarah?
Glad you asked that, Tom. Ice cream sandwiches running wild at AT&T. They've confirmed HTC One X is coming on May 6th. It will be $200, and pre-orders start on April 22nd. First ice cream sandwich phone on AT&T. Big deal. But that's not all. The HTC One S is launching on T-Mobile. That's their first ice cream sandwich phone for $200 on April 25th. You can sign up to be notified when it becomes available. If you're an Xbox 360 owner, but you don't have a Live Gold account, you're going to have a really fun weekend. April 19th through the 23rd, Microsoft is running a special promo dubbed Entertainment Unlocked. It'll give you a free taste of music, TV shows, movies, sci-fi, Crackle, Epix, YouTube. We're all involved.
All the stuff you would get if you
YouTube
paid.
is very much free. Yeah, Vivo, other entertainment sites, Netflix and Hulu Plus are giving you 30-day free trials. They also do that.
Some of these apps don't work if you don't pay for the live service, though.
That's true.
Yeah. So
what you won't
cool.
get, though, is free access to online gaming. So it's very much an entertainment push.
See.
But still, if you're not a Gold member, Live Gold account member, take advantage of this. And finally, I think that we're going to be talking about money for the majority of our show tomorrow because Microsoft, Nokia, and Verizon are all having their earnings calls.
Any predictions? 19th. Do you have any analyst expectations, Danny?
No, I don't follow.
Me either.
No.
I don't expect Nokia to surprise us, but I definitely expect them to make headlines. Verizon and Microsoft, I have no idea.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to what's incoming.
Incoming message.
we've got the first email, Sarah.
Yes. Sorry, I thought we started with a voicemail. McKinley Tabor writes, Dear TNT show, in regards to your discussion on near-field payment systems replacing cash, all I can say is that until I can tip a stripper with bitcoins, no digital currency will replace cash. There will always be perfectly legal transactions that a person would prefer that a payment processor not know about. It could be a guy's night out, how much junk food you buy, or the amount that you give to your church, your house of worship. Until a micropayment system combines convenience with the desire for anonymity, cash will still be king.
I like how he provided balanced examples, tipping a stripper or tithing at your house of worship.
Right. It's all...
Or both.
I don't care if cash goes away. I don't need cash. I think cash is heavy and dirty.
You can definitely tip people of any profession or make donations to nonprofit organizations and churches through mobile payments.
All sorts of stuff.
The potential is definitely there.
I mean, I guess if you're talking about not wanting some sort of a paper trail, cash is the way to go.
Sure.
But what do you have to hide? No, I'm just kidding. I don't know. I guess I just...
How long? I think this is in response to that story we had yesterday that by 2020, we'll be replacing cash and credit cards with mobile payments. Danny, do you feel like that's optimistic or in the right ballpark?
No, I think we're still going to have money. Anytime I have to leave a hotel and get my car, I think I'm going to have money.
You can tip on Square.
But can you imagine, you're standing in the cab line. It's like, oh, wait, hold on. Here's my cab. Give me your Square thing. I mean, it'll be nice when we get to the point where I could take my phone and just tap it against, the Bellman's phone, and that would be awesome because I never have enough ones. But I think we're going to have money. But I think we are still going to have money, but yes, I think it could advance a lot more. And one of the most annoying things is anytime you end up in, like, say, D.C. or someplace and you're in a cab and none of them want to take your credit cards. They pretend that they don't have the ability to do it. And it's like, I don't want to dig through this. I don't want to deal with the expenses. I would love to have it, but there's a long way to go. I mean, if you take Google Wallet, for example, I don't even know why they bother advertising it because it's like unless you have a Nexus S on Sprint, which was apparently declared the world's worst network in America, the world's worst network in America, right? But I mean, I actually have a Nexus S and I can't use it for anything. I have a Galaxy Nexus with NFC on Verizon that can't use Google Wallet. But Square's been nice. That's been impressive.
Yeah.
We use it. That's actually worked. You're like, really? It just works? That's
and
cool.
The best part about Square is you don't have to tap anything. I could see tipping the Bellman because I get in the cab, I realize I haven't tipped him, but he shows up on my little Square thing, and I'm like, oh yeah, tip that guy $1 as I'm driving away.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome.
Yeah,
Doorman on Square. Well, that's the limitation.
Of course, there'll be like
though,
5
of the
and you
stuff
won't know which one's the right one.
Right.
What's your name?
And that's why you want to.
Sure?
That's why you want to walk up. I just got a huge visual when Danny said like tipping the doorman. I was thinking you're tapping the doorman because you're like, where
not in the head.
Well, you don't know where his NFC adapter is. It could be up here or on his epaulette.
Just use the bump app.
Right, just bump.
Bump.
That's what you need.
Sorry, sir. I'm trying to pay you via PayPal.
And for the strippers, you're going to have to put the NFC thing somewhere else.
That's different. You're not supposed to touch them. Not at the place. Well,
not even
that's where geofencing comes in.
That's just what I've heard. Not supposed to touch.
Little Square earrings.
Now we're back to Square.
All right. It would work.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks, everybody, for watching or listening and submitting stories on our subreddit. TechNewsToday.reddit.com is the place to go to let us know what stories you would like us to cover every day. We appreciate all the stuff that folks put in there for us. It helps us make our lineup every day. And thanks to you, Danny Sullivan. Always great having you on the show. Let folks know what's going on over there at SearchEngineLand.com.
We're continuing to write about all the search news that's going on. We just posted an article actually off of the Yahoo thing asking which of the 8 mystery Yahoo products might go away. So we'll see what comes up with that. And as a reminder, we also launched a companion site called MarketingLand.com, which covers things a little bit more broadly than search.
Oh, yeah. Is Greg Sterling working on the Marketing Land side?
Yeah, all of us work at both of them. So
okay.
What happened with Search Engine Land is we want to keep that focused on search, and we keep doing that. But, we'd have coverage that made sense for us to be picking up on in other areas. And so we thought, well, we'll let Marketing Land go a bit broader on that way, and that way you get the best of both worlds.
Excellent. Check them both out. I recommend them highly. Thanks, everybody, for watching or listening. You can find us on the web at twit.tv/TNT. You can email us. Our email address is tnt@twit.tv, or give us a call. Leave us a voicemail. Our phone number is 260-TNT-SHOW. Patrick Beja from France joins us tomorrow. We'll see you then.
You need an end drum solo or something.
We do, right?